For the limited time mechanic, we're going to add in a few new features, including a user interface for our player. To begin, we want to open up our player script, and we can access this either by selecting our player and double-clicking in the inspector, or navigating to our scripts folder and double-clicking to open in Visual Studio. So the first thing, we want to make another new float, so we'll put a comma after our jump force, and we'll call this timer. Then we want to make this decrease as we go through the game. So at the very beginning, we want to set that to a new value. And instead of putting it in start, we're going to leave it as a public float so we can edit it in the editor and change on the fly depending on our need. So in update, simply we're going to say timer minus equals time dot delta time, and we'll save. Now if we head back to the editor and we select our player, we're going to set the timer to 60 and play the game. Now if you see in the inspector, the timer will go down in seconds. We want our player to be able to see this in game though. So we're going to create a UI element. We're going to go to Game Object, UI, and we want to create text. Now this has made a few things for our hierarchy. It's made a canvas, which stores all of our UI elements for the screen, and an event system. This controls all our clicks and allows our player to interact with the UI if we were to have things like buttons. And then we have our text that it's made. If I select canvas, hover my mouse over the scene view, and then press F. If I press T, so I'm in rect transform mode, you'll see that our canvas is there, and it matches the same ratio as our game view. And that's because our canvas has set to screen space. So it's going to match our camera and our screen so that it does appear much larger than our scene itself. We want to select the text. We're going to increase the size to about 28. Change the color to white. And we're then going to move it to the top left of our screen and increase the box so we can see the text. Now if we go back to game view, you'll see we've got it in the top left here. We also want to name the object so we can reference it later. We'll call this timer text. Naming your objects in the hierarchy allows us to more easily find what we need. So back in our script, we're going to be using the UI library of reference. So we need to go right to the top here, and on a new line, say using Unity Engine .ui. And this allows this script in particular to access the library of the UI elements. So now below I can say public text, and we'll call this timer text. So this means we can plug in a text object, much like our transform or our rigid body, from the editor that we can then edit with this script. And we'll say timer text dot text. So the text component of this object, but specifically this field, the text field, we're going to set to the value of our timer dot toString. ToString is a pre-built method within Unity that converts a number into a string value. A string is text within programming. We need to make sure that it is text and readable for our text component, so we'll convert it. If we save and go back to the editor, we need to select our player and drag timer text into this field here. Now if we hit play, you'll see the timer is displayed in-game. But we don't need all of these decimal places. So we'll stop the game, we'll go back to Visual Studio, and we can edit it simply by saying speech marks in here and 2 zeros. If we go back to Unity and press play, it's now just got a second counter on the clock. What we did there was use the method, and we've defined how we want it to be presented. If we were wanting more decimal places, we could put .00, play again, and you'll see we now have our timer to 2 decimal places. We can also combine this with text of our own. So we can say that timerText.text is equal to, if we're going to type something for it to read, we need speech marks, and I'll say time remaining, space at the end with speech marks, plus our timer.toString. So we're going to feed this text in, including the space, and add our timer onto the end. If we go back to Unity and play, you'll notice it has the beginning of it, but because our timer text is a bit too small, we need to increase the size and play again. And now you have time remaining and the time set there. Our last element is to make this a lose condition for our player if we hit 0. So we can say if timer is less than or equal to 0, then destroy game object. Destroy essentially deletes the object, and just typing game object will reference the object this script is on, which at this moment is our player. We'll go back to Unity, and to test this, we'll select our player. We'll change the timer to 2, so we're not waiting, and play. And as you see, the player is now deleted, and because the script for the timer was located on the player, it stopped counting as well.